All right. The media has you believing that if Kamala Harris gets in, she is going to be the single best reason inflation will go away. We all know that that is a lie. The stock market is more volatile than it's ever been. The war situation is more volatile than it's ever been. To help me go through some of the biggest news stories, I have Paul Stone. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So just some background. Paul is an America-loving, patriotic business owner. He owns Colonial Metals Group. And I wanted to have him on because I love getting a business owner's perspective on the economy and what it's like out there. I want to jump into one topic. NBC News recently went to Philadelphia. They put this panel of Black Americans together in hopes of discussing the economy, Bidenomics, Kamalanomics, right? And you can tell based off the questions that are asked that they are obviously trying to set Kamala Harris up to look good. And then everything goes 180 degrees in the opposite direction. And these people start saying, you know, that this is killing us. This inflation is killing us without killing us. Let me run this video and then we'll react to it together.
Great.
How hard has inflation hit you?
It hit me hard. It's hitting me hard.
Who do you blame for it?
I blame the federal government at this point. If a working class mom who works as a paralegal cannot buy a $2 bell pepper because it's now $5, imagine a mother living on food stamps. Imagine a mother who's making minimum wage trying to feed children. They're killing us without killing us. If you understand that. They're killing us without telling us they're killing us. They're hurting people in ways that they can't help themselves. Yeah. It's either feed my child or how about feed my children and I don't, but I have to go work.
Yep. All right. Pretty emotional, Paul. What's your first reaction to this woman's response?
That's the whole thing. That's why I'm pissed off. That's why sometimes I get a little emotional on shows. And thank you again for having me, putting up with me and my feelings about things. The government thinks, so if a government thinks it just needs a little more money, right? If you picture the focus of a government, right, is the center where all the problems come. They hear about all the problems. They're sitting there and like, oh my God, all they listen to is problems, right? So they want to solve those. In the old days, before they could print money, they would reach out into society and find some experts and put a panel together and decide how can they address, if they can address a solution to this problem. And then if they had a solution for the issue, it would cut budget from all the other programs, trim here, trim there, come up with the money to solve that problem. And we had to live where we prioritized what the problems were. And to some things, the government just, look, man, can all problems be solved? So once Nixon ends the gold standard, now they can print the money to solve all the problems. Here's what they're missing. And here's why I'm so heartbroken to see that woman testify to her experience. And it's true. As they print, you know, let me just get the Karl Rove whiteboard going real quick. Just 1 second. Hopefully this will be all right. So you can visualize this, right? 1971. You know, the years go out. This is 24. I'm not the greatest. Is this showing okay? All yes, right. This is 71. So they print money. The cost of goods goes up with the printed money. The wages doesn't. So in here, in the 80s, you start killing the middle class. The jobs start going overseas. They pass NAFTA. Now a lot of the jobs are going overseas. That creates the Rust Belt. And where we are today is, yeah, you have high flying asset values. You have homes. People that are flipping homes are doing great. They caught this financial wind, right? It's blowing at their backs. For most people, the financial wind is blowing in people's faces. It's blowing against them. It's making us miserable in this country. And it's all because the government thinks that printing money or taxing the rich or somehow getting their hands on more money is going to solve the problem. And what it's doing is creating hell on earth for 60% of our population. It's evil. It's stupid and evil.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I read that over 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, can't afford a $500 emergency. And yet the government, as you mentioned, you know, they're like customer service. All they hear is complaints and they go, okay, you know what we'll do? we'll just print more money.
Yes.
And then on top of that, we're being absolutely invaded by illegal immigrants. They've now proven that there are illegal immigrants that are getting $10,000 a month in food stamps. And then you have this beautiful American woman, probably a multi-generational woman, going, I can't afford bell peppers. And her money that she works for as a paralegal at a law firm, probably working 40 to 60 hours a week, she's saying, I can barely afford to put food on the table. Sometimes I have to go without food. And she's competing against an illegal immigrant that's not working, that's getting excessive amounts of taxpayer money.
Right. Because the government has its programs, and as it becomes sicker and sicker and more putrid in its head, it just comes up with, it just keeps putting out ridiculous policy and sickening actions, trying to stay in power. It's literally this thing that's being killed off by its own actions. And so the more and more it dies, the weaker it becomes, the more frenzied it becomes, reaching for more and more control. And I think we're at the zenith of it. And again, money printing, any money, even just normal economic expansion, causes gentle inflation. In the old days, repaying a loan helped grow the economy. We, as we worked and created actual products from actual labor, repaying loans grew the economy, which would cause general inflation, but it stayed beneath the cost of living increases. I'd flip that board around, our wages grew faster than the cost of living grew. So by the time you're 40, you could have a little cabin on the lake. You had 2 vacations a year. And guess what? Mom didn't have to work. Mom didn't have to work. In the 80s, you had the women's rights movement start because women were forced into the workforce because dad's income wasn't enough to make ends meet. How sickening is that? If it was a real government formed by real people, they could have stopped in their tracks and said, oh my God, look what we're doing here. We're forcing mothers to have their kids raised in a production system and force them into the workforce. Look at the generations to come. I'm not trying to get too philosophical, but any action against the people who live here, Reagan said it best, we have a government, not the other way around. They don't have a people. We have a government. We've lost sight of that. We've lost control of that. That genie's out of the bottle. But to me, by the simple measurements of what the dollar's worth today, is the easiest one. It shows how close we are to the cliff's edge. And I've told people, mathematically speaking, on the other side of this hell when it bankrupts, we get our country back. We get our country back. Could you imagine if the federal government was 1/5 the size it is today? 1/10. Something you don't even hear from anymore.
Yeah. It's all
that would be beautiful.
Yeah, it's all about expansion and not about right sizing, right? This they want to McDonald's supersize the government versus right size it.
What if today was the first day you heard the government had been printing money to pay our bills? You were in a diner, you're having breakfast, some guy kicks the door up and goes, they printed the money. They've printed all the money to pay the bills. How much? 35 trillion. You would just throw up. People would be having panic attacks in the diner. What? What do you mean? How broke are we? The government printed $35 trillion. A billion seconds is 31 years. A trillion seconds is 31,000 years. So on a human scale, time and distance is a good way to try to articulate things to the human experience, right? That's over 1 million years of money created by the federal government in the last 24 years, mostly. 24 years, 1 million years of money to do what? They've caused problems that no one on earth could possibly solve. Only a bankruptcy solves these problems. And history is full of those lessons from Rome to today, that's what's going to happen. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm trying to say, here's a solution. The solution is you get to choose from 4 locations for where you want your money. You want to hold on to the little gains you keep seeing? Great. God be with you. The bulls make money. Bears make money, pigs get slaughtered. So my message is start looking at preservation. Do you think there's a strong case these days to preserve your savings until you wake up in the morning excited as hell to go racing back into what you're used to investing in? And those 4 places for your savings is cash in a safe at home, real estate, in the financial world, and in the vault. The vault is outside the financial world, and you're dealing with an asset that's not man-made.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when Russia first invaded Ukraine, I said to my wife, "Man, if this were me, if I had like a fortune teller's ball to tell me the future, Like I would have put all of my money into gold and silver or crypto, something that could be preserved and moved with me to another country. Some of these people were moving to, other European nations completely broke because their money just all of a sudden had no value. People in Poland didn't want Zelensky dollars. They wanted Polish dollars, So anyway, it's really interesting. I want to go back to inflation. A couple of nights ago, Elon Musk hosted former President Donald Trump. They had a really insightful discussion. But one of the things that stood out to me was former President Donald Trump correctly pointed out that they were starting to drive down the debt before the COVID China virus came in. And then it was like they had to print money in order to survive. Then things became, they got things under control again. Then Biden comes in and prints, almost $6 trillion more unnecessarily. The invasion comes in of over 10 million illegal immigrants. And so Trump starts saying, look at how much money was inflated. Look how much money is chasing the same amount of goods. Look at all these people that are spending US dollars without earning US dollars. And things just start to balloon out of control. How dangerous has it been for the Biden administration to basically have unrestricted ability to print money?
Well, I mean, it's been horrific because their ideas have no honor towards the dollar at all. The other party has struggled with honoring the sanctity of the dollar. But here's where I disagree with President Trump. Here's one way to visualize inflation and how long it's been acting up in our lives. Since the year 2000, gold has averaged a return of 9% a year. The S&P is around 5%. Now, if you think of gold and silver as commodities, right? Money printing causes commodities, which is what I mean by the cost of living. What in your home, what did you eat tonight? Where did you drive where you didn't use a commodity, right? So the cost of living is the acquisition of commodities. They're the building blocks of every product you'll use. Everything comes from the earth in one way or another. Aliens aren't delivering Uber Eats food from some other planet, right? Everything comes from the earth. So when you look at pushing higher on the cost of commodities, that's what's killing people's enjoyment of life today. That's why there's coffee shops everywhere over the last 50 years. We're always caffeinated. We can't stop moving. No one can feel at peace because you can't coast. Most people can't coast. Bezos can probably coast. Musk can coast, although he has a lot of challenges he has to constantly deal with, rockets and brain implants and electric cars. But when you look at the general American population, it can't rest. There's no relaxation. That's been robbed from us by the printing of money. Another way to understand it is, here's the reason for the debt. I just want to say this. It's a little bit boring, but just think of it this way. And I don't want to take too much time, Stephen, but we're rolling, right? 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, we're rolling. Why? Why are we so dominant? Because we had a baby boom. We had 60 million people pour into the workforce at the same time. Guess what's going to happen someday? They're going to leave. Just picture a snake swallowing a football. That big population bubble moves through the snake. Guess where it ends up? Out the other end. So in 97, you have 60 million people leaving the workforce, and they are now, many of them are a cost on the economy. You lose the production and you have a cost. That puts us in a Grand Canyon sized black hole that no one can fix now. So the government starts printing. Debt is around 4 trillion in the year 2000. Gold's 300. Today, debt's 35 trillion and gold's 2,400. And of course, the excess money ends up in the stock market and in the real estate market. Isn't that the sexiest place for money you don't need to work with to sit? So those vessels expand in attractiveness and expand in perceived value, but it's all coming from you killing the dollar. The dollar's worth 56 cents in the year 2000. Today, it's worth 3. You kill that resource to prop everything up because the government doesn't know how to solve anything, but they do create problems. That's what their business seems to be. They create incredible issues. And so when Trump says he was kind of working the debt lower, it can't be stopped. When Social Security, and I'll finish with this, was created, there were 44 workers to a retiree. Today, there's 3. So look at how untenable that is. That's like 3 people pulling pulling a plow, when back in the old days, you had 44 people to pull that plow. Today, there's 3, and it keeps getting worse. It can't be fixed. Money printing can't stop. Inflation can't stop. The prices keep going higher, about 8% a year. It's not going to end until it breaks.
Yeah. Well, that is one thing that I appreciate about gold and silver is they are outside of the U.S. fiat currency. They are outside of the control of Congress. If there's war, more valuable. If there's lack, more valuable. You can't print gold. You can't digitally create gold or silver. And I think that's why it's so important to have some of that in your portfolio. Another thing I wanted to go over with you is the stock market has this big drop on Kamala Harris, right? Like she had this bump in the polls, they're calling the honeymoon, and the stock market had just the opposite. Like they had like a slump based off of her information. Almost $1 trillion went out of the market. Did we see $1 trillion flood out of the gold market?
No.
Okay. Silver market?
No.
No. Okay. So they remain stable. And that's what I guess. I literally didn't look this up, but do you think that had to do with so many of the big popular stock names being just exceptionally overvalued? What's your thinking on why that stock market suddenly saw the tide roll back out?
You know, I'm not a trained economist and I'm not a financial advisor. What I try to do is share what I've studied and read because I give a damn. I'm even putting a book out about it, and it'll be in its final stages here at the end of August and out sometime during September. We'll talk more about that, but it's not about gold and silver. It's about the message. It's about how the government has no clue how to manage society. When you think of an engineer, they're generally working with things that stay put. You're building a bridge, the concrete stays put, the steel girders stay put, right? When you're going to work with people, we move around all the time. We're very shifty. We grow. Our ideas change. Managing a society and socialism can never work. That's why democracy was the greatest attempt for human beings to feel free and happy and hopefully lucky. When you look at what you're talking about now, excuse me, there is no way to have a high-flying, super successful financial world without a ton of precarious features and erosion to your system. If the Fed is starting to talk about cutting rates, that's the confirmation to a layperson like me that you have issues. Why? Why would we disrespect the dollar again? Shouldn't we charge at least 5 cents to borrow the damn thing, right? And when you look back at more normal economic times, the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, before leaving the gold standard, interest rates set by the Fed were generally around 6%. That's normal. That keeps it's not too cheap, but it's not too expensive. If we have to start cutting rates and jump on the gas pedal again to juice the economy again, it means the economy can't run without the printed money, and you're killing the Fed by having rates at 5-6% because interest on the debt is $1 trillion a year. So if the Fed starts making noise about cutting rates, hopefully in September, that spooked people. And just quoting news headlines, Buffett dumps $85 billion of his position in Apple on Friday. And so you just maybe see people following suit.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Besides, aren't those mostly institutional investors that are making new moves? Harry homeowner's sitting by his lazy boy waiting for someone to give him a call.
Yeah.
Those moves aren't made by Harry homeowner, not in my opinion. And again, no financial advice, just things you wonder that I say, go look them up, see for yourself, see if it makes sense.
Well, the very wealthy and the institutions, they own more than 50% of the stock market. Yeah. So when they make moves, it's very quickly and they lock in that money. But like you say, that the average Joe, the Harry homeowner, they're not getting the same level of advice,
No.
And
because institutional traders, aren't they bonused at the end of the year based on their performance?
Yeah.
Harry homeowner's just saving for retirement and hoping there's going to be something there when he or she retires, and that it stays there as they, keep tripping through the sunset of their time here.
Yeah. It's interesting is, like when let's say that the markets are dropping, you're not getting a phone call from your gold person. Gold is down 50%, sell, like panic. It's like, hey, listen, this is stable. It's going to come back. Why don't we add to your portfolio with the new money, and you can buy up a bunch of new gold at these great prices. I just think there's such a difference between working with volatility versus stability.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I have enjoyed about gold and silver. It'll be really interesting to see the outcome of this upcoming election. I think Trump is smart in that he's not assuming that he's just going to win. I mean, this guy is rallying, campaigning like he knows he has to win this thing versus he's just going to win this thing. And I think the American people see that hustle and they can respect it. But, they've got to get this inflation under control. Like this poor woman that, I showed the video. Again, they start asking her questions, hoping that she's going to prop Kamala Harris up. And instead, she's like, listen, Kamalanomics is absolutely crushing my family into the dirt.
Yeah, but check it out. They don't include agriculture or energy-related products in the government's inflation calculation number. That number they're showing, that it's around 3 or something %. Everyone should go to shadowstats.com and look at an old school way. He's like an 80-year-old, great, wonderful John Williams economist, puts this website up. I've mentioned to him, maybe he should rename it something a little more pleasant than Shadow Stats. But you'll see that inflation right now, counted the old-fashioned way, before the government changed the recipe in the 80s, and changed it again in the 90s, and changed it again during Biden's presidency, right before the Fed started raising rates in 22. In December of 21, they put out a little 3-sentence headline that they were watering down the weighting of, there's no shelter in the number, and there's hardly any agricultural weight in the number, and hardly any energy-related product in the number either. So inflation counted the old-fashioned way is 12%. That seems right. 12%. Guess what unemployment is? Counted the old-fashioned way, 25%. Guess what GDP would be since 2008 without any printed money? A negative number. Whoa. So inflation is 12%, unemployment is 25%, and GDP is a negative number since 2008. Oh, I think that's probably the greatest definition we've ever had of a depression. You just don't feel it because of the printed money. As the dollar dwindles to being worth 1/10 of a penny, you're eventually going to feel it. The government likely changed the currency before that. They have to, or you'll set off a firestorm from everything I've read that would create hyperinflation. You're not even feeling inflation right now. Hyperinflation is where the Fed might have to set rates at 40%. 40%. You are literally choking the economy to death. You are stopping everything from moving, economically speaking, to try and get that fire put out. Changing the currency will keep that from happening, and that's why I believe it will happen very soon. And if there's a Democrat in the White House next year, I don't think you'll enjoy the conversion.
Yeah, no, I agree. The US dollar has lost 26% of its buying power just under Joe Biden, and under Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, since I started telling people that I was buying gold and silver, it went from like 1,600 to around 2,400. It's been a nice steady increase. And so anyway, Paul, I want to thank you for coming on and going over these economic things, the inflation. I really hope they get under control. I just want to give your company a plug because you guys have been so good sponsoring my channel. If you want to learn more about gold and silver, Colonial Metals Group is the group to do that. You can call the 800 number, speak with one of their professionals. You can also go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Gardner. To learn more about that. I just think this is such an important time to have gold and silver in your portfolio. They do not have inflation under control. And the only reason that they are considering lowering interest rates isn't because inflation and costs are under control. It's like you mentioned, they see an emergency on the horizon, and they're going to put their foot on the gas and try to print their way out of this, but it's just only going to make things worse. So Anyway,
Yeah.
hopefully people will reach out and get more information from you
May
guys.
I make one last point?
Yes, please.
If this election doesn't go the way half the country is hoping and praying on both knees that it go a certain way, Donald Trump, right? If he doesn't win the White House in November, to me, someone who's been in this field for a long time, has a finger on the pulse of these retirees that are exhausted. They've had hope for a long time. Someone comes back. We don't have to give up on the American financial system yet. We don't have to go through the trouble of converting our money to gold and silver yet. If that election doesn't go Donald Trump's way in November, we are going to see a massive, I believe, a massive, massive onslaught of people who no longer have the luxury of having hope, move their savings to precious metals. And if you wait, you'll end up in a very long line of people who are also wanting to do that.
Yeah.
So take a look at how important that retirement savings is, where it's located, what it's made from, right? This revolutionary cannonball that set us free from the British is made of metal. It's made of something real. You drop it on your kitchen table like a gold bar, it makes a sound, right? The dollar printing, eventually it sounds like, so take a look at the next, 60, 90 days that we have before this election. Get with yourself, look around the financial sphere at what worries you and find some credibility in what I'm saying and give us a call so we can help, because we truly are here to listen.
Yeah. Well, and I love the fact that you can now do an IRA. A lot of people over the age of 50, most of their wealth is in their home or an IRA or a 401k, but they don't know that you can now set up a self-directed IRA, which allows you to hold gold and silver. It's a really brilliant move to be able to do that. So hopefully people will call and get some information. I know you've got to run, Paul. I appreciate you coming on and going over these inflation issues with me. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks for having me, Stephen. I look forward to seeing you again soon.